Suburban Ennui and Dystopia in American Fiction. We will be looking at the mid to late 20th century suburban American novel primarily, as well as some short stories and poems. And this is a genre that, as you probably know, is primarily associated, at least initially so, with John Cheever and John Updike, both of whom, of course, we'll be reading, but beyond them as well. We'll be looking at the post-war American shift to a society that started gathering in these rapidly developing suburbs and exurbs also in a couple of cases. And so this movement in American society naturally infiltrated fiction, as fiction was striving to represent and then explore and ultimately critique this big cultural shift. So these texts are going to examine how, in some cases, the architecture itself of the suburbs creates a landscape of kind of what became the sanctioned, almost officially sanctioned American way of life. I think of it sometimes as an architecture of belonging, satisfying some kind of primal desire for order in people, and satisfying it with what turned out to be kind of cultural homogeneity, as well as a blurring of public space and private space. I want to look at how those factor into some of these stories. But if you think about getting, at this time at least, in the second half of the 20th century primarily, getting the house with the tree in the yard and the station wagon in the driveway, like this picture shows, these are the markers of security and success for one big demographic of the United States. This is where the American dream was supposed to lead. So I just want to look at why so many of these texts that write about that end up exploring really the dark side of suburbia, portraying it as unfulfilling, alienating, existential, like dystopian, literally dystopian at times. So we'll be looking at, this will surprise no one who's ever taken a class with me, but we'll be looking at gender, how the constructions of gender are exacerbated by suburban life, both for men and for women, how suburban communities within neighborhoods, like smaller, not suburban and suburbia in general, but the neighborhood communities that are formed, how those effect change in the individuals who are trying to navigate those neighborly negotiations. And of course, class is deeply woven into this topic as well. We have a climbing middle class striving for these markers of success. What does it signal publicly to be able to move to the suburbs, which of course then ties into the issue of race and white flight. And so all of these are pretty multi-layered, what seems to be just like a straightforward cultural shift. It's ends up with a lot of, creating a lot of issues, at least as the fiction of the time is depicting it. Why does it, I just want to ask, why does achieving the dream so often result in dissatisfaction? And these novels are about strained relationships between the neighbors and adulterous marriages and disaffected kids and awkward parenting and existential despair. Why didn't the dream work? What went wrong? And so we'll be reading several novels. I have to tell you that the more I read around in this genre, the more things I keep discovering. So I've been cramming more things in, and I might still be jiggering a couple more things in there, but we'll be reading several novels, many of which have been made into films, and I'll be focusing on the texts of the novels, but I'm sure that I'm going to sneak in a scene or two from some of these classic films, as well as a bunch of shorter works that I'll post on the website. But we'll be reading, of course, The Swimmer by John Cheever, The Stepford Wives, The Ice Storm, The Virgin Suicides, White Noise, a bunch of shorter works by Joyce Carol Oates, John Updike, George Saunders, A.M. Holmes, Margaret Atwood. I've been like, the more I read, the more I find to read. And so I've been finding things to add. I've even been cultivating a playlist of songs about suburbia, which is not something I typically do for my classes, but I'll share that with you as well. It's a thing. So I'm inviting you to come and explore the dark side of the American suburbs with me. I hope to see you there.